G'day team. Now today's video is going to be slightly different to what we would usually see. We're going to be staying in the confinements of this apartment and we're going to run through the film camera collection that I have. So the idea is to show you how I've gone from camera to camera, show you the sort of content that I've been able to do and how it's allowed me to grow as I've moved through. So let's get into it. The first camera, the Rolleiflex 3.5F. This is one of the white-face versions, so very, very lucky to have the original box for this guy. It is a little bit tattered on the side, but the fact that you've got that beautiful blue box is very, very impressive for a camera of this age. It is a Type 4 version, so one of the latest versions that was released. Yeah, I managed to get a hold of it when I was working at the photo shop. It was really the first 120 film camera that I played around with. There's something about the Rollie that gives you a very charismatic look and feel to the image. I think it's the 75mm focal length that you get on this model that I fell in love with. But again, it is that recognizable camera. On this side, we obviously have the user manuals. Now I've got two of these. I did actually get a CLA done on it, so that is that part. But these are actually in pretty good condition, and it's always cool kind of reading back and looking at what these get up to. Now pulling it out of the box there. This one was in really good condition. Obviously it winds through really nicely. Everything works really good. The gears are also very, very smooth, and the focus box comes out really nicely. So all in all, a really nice version of this camera. The thing I love about the Rolleiflex is that it was very easy to use. Now this is because if you think of your exposure triangle, you have your aperture and your shutter speed right there in front of you. So for a working model that is going to give you the absolute basics and fundamentals, it just felt really intuitive to use. Pop up and you see whatever is in front of you through this viewing window, and then the left hand side here, you use that to move your focus. Now I did get a couple of accessories with this thing. So the strap, which I have bundled up, a lens hood, another lens hood, which is a little bit tattered and munted up, a UV filter, which doesn't actually work when the lens cap is on, so just have to keep that in mind. And here we have a couple of masks as well, so if you want to shoot different formats. I probably shot on this camera for a decent 12 to 18 months before I moved on to the next camera that I purchased. This was actually a really nice model to learn on, again, because you have that exposure triangle right there. Gives you 12 shots, so we're looking at that square format with 120 photography. But it also allowed me to work on a couple of double exposures. So double exposures with the Rolleiflex are actually pretty easy to do. Obviously when you wind your frame through, take your first shot, and then what you do is you lift that up and you put a little bit of pressure and you click that back. And that's going to recock your shutter without actually advancing. So then you can wind through and fire off another frame. Now this is the camera that I actually took the Holy Spirit church photo on. Again, using that same process, took the first photo, rewound the shutter like that, and then took that second frame. All in all, love this film camera. Yeah, it's probably the sort of thing I would take out maybe once or twice a year and play around with and run a roll through, and even use it at Christmas time, take some portraits of the family, that sort of thing. So, right, the second camera that I got my dirty little mitts on was a Plaubel Machina W67. Now I got this from Photo and Video, still a 120 camera, 6:7 format. So instead of 12 photos to a roll of film, like on the Rollie, I am only getting 10. So a little bit more selective. But the beautiful thing about this camera is it incorporates a bellows mechanism. So that lens collapses inwards to make it a super slimline design, but it also pulls outwards as well when you want to shoot. Now the settings for this camera are on the front of the lens. So you've got your aperture ring there, so going from 4.5 to 22, and shutter speed just behind it. So it varies from 1/10 of a second all the way up to a 500th of a second. 55mm lens, so the reason it is a W67, so 6:7 being the format, W standing for wide angle, so 55mm on 120 equates to about a 28mm equivalent. Yeah, this has been a really fun camera. It gets mistaken for a mirrorless because it looks slimline. It doesn't look like it's a camera from the 1970s. The focus, so when you pull the lens out like that, the focus is up here on that wee ring. So you shift the lens in and out and you find your focus through the rangefinder. And the final and most recent camera that I have added to the collection is the Mamiya 7 II. Now this actually came with 4 lenses. It was the whole kit. It was one of those things where I was looking at for a very long time and decided to pull the pin. Now the Machina over here, this is actually very reminiscent of Mamiya. So from my understanding, Machina was purchased by Mamiya, and the design features from this model were then incorporated into the following Mamiya designs. So as you can see, I will do a side-by-side very shortly. You'll be able to see the direct correlation, but let's crack in. Mamiya 7.2. So we have the instruction manual there. Again, really cool to kind of look through these, and it's not the sort of thing that you get often with cameras these days because it's all online. When I got this camera, I actually got a Peak Design strap made up, so had Mamiya on it. I've had a lot of shit from this camera strap, as you can imagine. So pulling the camera out of the box, that ergonomic grip on the sides, so very easy to hold on to. And we will look at the lenses. So probably the lens that I'm most used to, given that I shoot wide angle on the Plaubel, is the 43mm. Now it does say a 50mm on the box, but it is a 43. I'm not sure what happened to the original box, but again, another manual, the 43mm lens hood, and the lens there. So that actually extends out, that goes into the chamber of the camera, and the viewfinder there. Obviously the viewfinder sits on the top, so you have to use this to compose with this lens. So it sits on the top like this, and then you actually focus up through this viewfinder here. So it can be a bit tedious going between the two, and it does draw a little bit of attention because it's sitting on the top like that. Now the second lens, the 65mm f4. So I personally haven't used this lens as much as the 43 and the 80, and it is a little bit bigger than some of the others. So usually whenever I take out the Mamiya, I'll only take 2 lenses because the idea of the camera is to be portable. And if I'm taking along 4 lenses with me, then it's not really going to be an option. So I do try to keep it pretty minimal. And the 80mm there. More often than not, I will take the 80mm because in terms of size, it is a lot smaller than the 65mm. I also feel that the 65 and the 43 are just too close together in terms of focal length. Being able to have that diversity between a wide angle and a portrait style lens between the 43 and the 80, I feel works really well in terms of my style. Now the final lens that I have is the 150mm. Now I have actually only used this lens a couple of times. It's not really my focal length that I choose, but again, a couple of manuals. Johnson's Phototopia in Newcastle. So I don't actually know who owned this camera before me, but there is everything here. So the registration cards, the manuals. So the 150mm is actually quite a big and heavy lens. So it is the sort of thing that if I am going to be shooting it, I am going to want to be shooting something quite specific. I've found that if I use this lens, chances are I'm going to be shooting the moon or possibly waves down at the ocean, a little bit of surf photography. So again, it is a large lens. It's similar in size to the 65mm. So that's how I want to be as portable as possible. I usually leave these two at home. We do a bit of a comparison here in terms of lens sizes. As you can see, I try to take the 2 smaller ones and leave the 2 bigger ones at home. The idea with any camera, I guess, is you want to be as portable as possible, because if you're not, the chances of you actually taking and bringing your camera along with you are very slim. So that is where I started with the Rolleiflex. It was quite a small camera for 120. The Plaubel again kind of slid into my camera bag and was the sort of camera that, given it collapsed down, was one of those ones that made it really useful. Obviously having that lens flexibility with the Mamiya was a big step up from something like this. But again, you are going to be paying big money for something like this. So I guess the question I have asked myself as I've moved through each of these models is, how has this progressed my photography? The Rolleiflex, like I said before, was a great camera to learn on because you have that exposure triangle right there. It feels very mechanical, it's very recognizable. It made me enjoy film photography because I would have people when I was at a cafe or out and about on the street that would come up to me and just start chatting, and it made film photography and actually shooting so much more fun because people were almost interested in what you were doing. The Machina over here opened the doors in terms of wider angle stuff. So this is a very tight focal length. You're looking at 75mm. This obviously opened up the doors in terms of moving into that 28mm wide angle stuff. So again, allowed my creative eye to develop a lot further and a lot deeper than this camera did. Being able to bridge the gap between something like this and something like this is what I got from the Mamiya. So I've got the wide angles, I've got the mid-range portraits, and I've also got the tights. So something that I can just pick up, and I know that I can trust each of these lenses and be able to interchange is something that I found really useful. In terms of these two models, it has been a while since I've been out and shot with them, but because they were such a big part of the photographic growth, it is something that I do like shooting and going back and revisiting every now and then. But I feel that the depth that you get from medium format, whether you're shooting the GFX system or the medium format film photography, I feel the depth is just unparalleled and the images are so lifelike. But then again, you don't get that portability that you get with the 35mm. Yeah, really excited. Obviously, if you guys have any questions about any of these cameras, I'm more than happy to answer them for you. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers.